see how it goes. I'm sure there's going to be some minor delays, but
if I don't move, maybe it's okay.
Yeah, I still don't see any settings to choose between, HD.
There is a volume setting at the top. That's for bandwidth.
Right.
Aha.
Right. There you go.
Technology.
Yeah, that's a very intuitive icon for okay, whatever. Yep, here you go. I got it now.
With that,
great.
Welcome to the Web Platform Podcast, episode number 117, Vivaldi. And today we are joined with some developers all the way from Oslo, Norway. You guys in?
Yep.
Pretty close.
We're actually both quite far from Oslo right now, but yes, that's where we usually work.
So what's the commute like for you guys?
Well, my commute is by boat. So I take a boat like half an hour every morning. I live in a peninsula. And Henrik, he goes by train, right?
Yeah, I go for 1 hour and 30 minutes by train.
Die hard, just like Mr. Ribeiro over there.
Hey, it takes me 3 hours, 4 hours on a good day-ish to get to San
Each way?
Some days, yeah.
Ooh.
Area.
That's dedication.
Can't do it anymore. So today on the
web better. That's the key. The web is about dedication.
Right.
It is. So today on our panel we have Justin Ribeiro.
Hello, wonderful people. So good to see you out there.
And myself, Eric Isaacson. And today we are joined with, as I said, some developers from Vivaldi, and that's Adel Mo and Henrik Helmers.
Hello, I'm Atle.
Yeah.
Can you guys tell a little bit about yourselves? Sorry.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So Adel, you want to start?
Sure. Yeah. I joined Vivaldi 2 years ago, and before that, I came from advertising. So I was actually the first employee at the Oslo office, which did not come from Opera. So I'm kind of the odd one out with no browser background. So yeah, I spent 10 years doing web pages and advertising, and then jumped over to doing web browsers. So that's my short story.
Yeah, and I joined Vivaldi, I think, half a year before Atle, approximately. And before that, a long time ago, I worked at Opera. And I've been a year in a newspaper and worked as a consultant for a bit. And now I'm at Vivaldi.
You're on
Eric,
mute.
your lips are moving, but you were totally on mute.
All right, so
there you go.
There we go.
Woohoo! I love technology. So, I mean, what is Vivaldi? For those listening who are kind of like, what are these guys talking about? What framework is this? And where is its origins?
Obviously, it's a new JavaScript framework.
Obviously, Vivaldi.js.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I can start. Yeah, it's a browser. It's built using JS, so I mean, you're onto something. So it's built using web technology, and so we're using React and NPM, and it's HTML, CSS. So it's built with the web, basically, which is kind of fun. Yeah, and it's a browser for people who kind of want a bit more from their browser. You can customize basically everything and have everything adapt to your needs. So it's a bit like just offering more choices, basically. I guess we'll go into this in more detail later, but there's so many browsers doing the same thing. So we're trying kind of to go the opposite of that, not simplifying, but maximizing.
Yeah, I like to call it the utility truck browser because we do everything for everyone. And you forgot to mention that we're based on Chromium, so we have our rendering engine in common with Chromium browser or Chrome browser.
Yeah, that's true.
So you said it's based on Chromium. Like how does it diverge? Because most of you, not everyone, obviously, as we've heard, comes from Opera, and they used to have Presto, and then they moved over to Blink, which is what Chrome uses. So how different or similar is your Chrome build? Like, have you diverged quite a lot from what Chrome is doing?
Maybe I can take that one. I would say we are as similar as possible to the Chromium rendering engine, because we want to work with as many sites as possible. So I mean, the less we have to modify Chromium, the better it is. But at the same time, we are doing modifications to add enhancements to support UI features and also potentially new browser features. So I mean, we take Chromium and then we modify it as we need. And I mean, as we continue to grow, then the stuff that we touch upon will likely just keep on growing.
I mean, the UI is our own, right? So we use, Chrome, as you said, as a rendering engine, but the whole UI is our own, right?
Yeah, I forgot that little detail. I mean, the Chromium, we have a sort of a two-way, tiny detail there, two-way split, right? Where the engine is what powers the thing, and then what we work on every day, what we use to build the browser, is what's on top of the engine, right? Because we're using web technology to make the browser.
So all the features and all this stuff in the UI, that's mostly JavaScript, just some C++, but it's the entire UI layer is our own, like 95% of it. Yeah.
So
How much of it does? Go ahead, Justin.
So from a web compatibility standpoint, if you're out there as a developer and you're saying, how do I target the Vivaldi browser? You don't have to so much worry about the web compatibility sort of portion of things. If you're understanding how Chromium renders your things, you're going to get a very similar render to that in Vivaldi from a viewport perspective, correct?
Yeah, I would say identical. I mean, there are cases of certain sites specifically targeting us and other smaller browser vendors where they say we're not compatible because we're not Chrome, but it's the same rendering engine, so there's no reason to do that, right? So, yeah.
You shouldn't be doing that either way. I think we can all agree that user agent sniffing is probably a last-ditch resolve. That please don't. You're just gonna have a bad day later.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, if you're coding by web standards, then it will work in Vivaldi. So I mean, the best thing you can do for us is to just follow the standards and be nice, and then everything will be good.
Yeah.
So from Opera, how much was taken from there? And I did see some videos on YouTube from John, the founder, or one of the founders, right? And he had said a quote that I thought was really interesting. He had said, "The goal is to be the innovator in the market." And I mean, why would you choose the things that you've chosen, and how is that kind of innovating? Like, what are you doing that's innovating?
I can start. So like I mentioned initially, we have, I think there's two things. Right? Browsers haven't really changed that much, right? But in terms of features, and most of them are simplifying. But in the engine side of things, you have things like the W3C, and they are kind of moving ahead with the standards and all these things that they are kind of slowly progressing over time, and it's all good. But as far as browser features goes, there's not much going on. If you look at the time span, at least. So there's not so much innovation going on in that space, I would say. So that's kind of where we come in, right? We offer all these different features for the browser, not for the rendering part, but for the browser features.
Yeah. I think it's like you can think of Vivaldi like if you have a toolbox, then Vivaldi is a really full set of tools. Whereas most other browsers will have very few tools. I mean, the entire goal of Vivaldi is to give everyone the ability to customize it to their needs. So it's just a completely different approach. I mean, in my mind, it's the opposite of Safari, for instance, or maybe even Chrome, which is about stripping down everything. And then if there is something you want, then maybe there is an extension for it. But with Vivaldi, instead, we're just building everything in, and then you can turn it on if you want it.
So, I mean, to some extent, it's kind of like when Mozilla sort of came into the fold way back from the ashes of Netscape, because if I'm old, so maybe I remember, but Mozilla, before there was Firefox, there was Mozilla, which was the suite of things that stacked up that was kind of heavy, because browsers got heavy towards the end of sort of the 90s into the early parts of the 2000s. So you're taking a similar approach of here's a lot of features, but here's lightweight, fast features, right?
Yeah. And I mean, also, yeah, and I mean, it's like you mentioned initially, we're kind of coming from Opera, and a lot of people maybe claim like we are I mean, we take what was there in the old Opera, Presto Opera, and kind of that's like a baseline for the features we want, and then so when we reach that level, which that was a pretty insane level of features, even back then. But so that's kind of the baseline, and then we want to kind of keep going from there, right? And that's a lot of features. But yeah, that's.
Well, and Opera was very innovative at the time too. I think people have a tendency to forget, because I was a big fan of Presto. Like, Presto as a rendering engine was always really standards compliant. Like, it was always the first, if in most cases.
It was fast too. It was very fast.
Blazing fast. And you always needed two, implementations before standards sort of moved forward. And like, Presto was usually always at the forefront of that. Like, and that was a good thing for the web as a whole. And when you all stacked features up top, and like using Vivaldi now, like I get that feel of like that speed. You had a very featureful browser that if I don't need to understand how extensions work, I don't need to understand where all these things come from. And I think that's a very powerful feature for a lot of people.
There's also the security aspect. You don't need to rely on third-party random extension developers to, feed your browser with stuff you have no idea what is, and again, compatibility issues, and so that's all kind of taken care of for you by us, right? So that's different, or another good reason for it to have things built in.
Yeah, I just want to say about speed and performance that Opera had amazing performance, especially in terms of memory management, and I mean, it's not really fair to do the comparison, but still, I mean, even we do. And I mean, Jon still likes to compare us to the old Opera, before it started using Blink. And I mean, if you look at the memory usage of a modern browser compared to an old browser, there are things like the just-in-time JavaScript compilation, and that it will run separate threads, which makes it consume a lot more memory. So it's difficult for us to compete against that old Opera. But I mean, I still think it's sort of a goal for Jon that one day we will use probably around 0 kilobytes of memory. I think that's our goal.
So how do you think on that note too? Like, do you compare to the browsers that are around, like Chrome and Firefox and Safari? Because they do, to your point, if I go and I do PS or top in my command line, I can see that, 9 out of 10 times I'll have like 10 or 15 tabs open, and I'll see it's up at the top for Chrome or Firefox or any of them. So is yours comparable, or is it faster in that sense, or better, I should say, as far as memory management?
I think I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I'm just a lovely designer, so I don't touch up on these things every day. But we have worked on things like lazy loading or tab hibernation, which will take tabs that you don't use and discard them from memory, at least as much as possible. So there are some things we can do, and I mean, this is something that we do think about. But I mean, it's the same trade-off that every browser does, that it will sacrifice a significant amount of memory to be able to be much faster at JavaScript. So we can't really we can't really change that, but it's that's the way it is.
And there's been a lot of work, I mean, in Blink, for instance, around optimization, memory usage, and everything. Are you guys actively working on Blink as well in terms of core, or are you simply working on sort of just taking things from the Blink source tree at certain stages and implementing them in your stack?
I guess I can answer that as well. I think the answer is that we would like to work on the Blink Source 3, but it's about developer resources. So eventually we will probably do it. But for now, it's like we only do minor modifications. So I think it's a question about time, because it's sort of the responsible thing to do, right? Because we take this and then we're supposed to participate. So I think it's a question of time before we do.
It's not only that, but you then make it your own as well, right? Where now you're invested in that, and you make it better for everyone. And then they make it better for you too, whoever else is contributing to it, ideally, at least.
Yeah. But it's like you mentioned, I mean, we're a small team still, right? So it's right now it's a matter of resources and time. But I think we definitely kind of want to go in that direction.
For sure.
As we grow, yeah.
So, you had your first stable release in April of this year, right? Am I correct?
Yeah, time flies. I don't know. Is it correct, Sonic? I think it sounds about right.
I think this year sounds about right, but it feels like it was a lot longer ago than.
Yeah, I would say even earlier, but maybe it was. Yeah, we had the TPs before this, so that kind of blends in. But yeah, sounds about right.
And how often are you releasing like builds for the browser, like fixes and updates and features? How often does that happen?
That's pretty easy.
Yeah.
No, you take it.
Yeah, we follow the Chromium release cycle in terms of, their cycle. So we try to not stay too far behind. So about every 6 weeks we will release an update, but we do weekly snapshots. So you can follow along on the like not nightlies, but weeklies. So you can get like the latest developments if you want to be on the edge. So we do those in our community. Sorry.
Like a developer preview, like Firefox has Aurora and Chrome Dev Channel.
Yeah.
So not like Canary, which is every night, but
but we have
Firefox
some internal tester. Like we have a group of people that test for us, and they get daily, even multiple times per day, sometimes builds. But that's not distributed outside. So that's only for a select few. So yeah, so we have. The main is the snapshots and the stable channel.
Yeah, and it hasn't been that long since you've been building this, right? Like I would say the beginning of 2015. Am I correct there?
Yeah, Henrik, do you know more about the exact dates?
Exactly when we started building it. I think our security man Yngve, he was the one who got Vivaldi up and running. And that's a long time ago. It was before I joined. He had something working, but it's changed a lot since then.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question is, how have processes and technologies changed from the beginning into your first stable release? And even today, like, I would imagine that it's been so fast and so many changes. Like, can you talk about that?
Like what's been going on around us?
No, the development from zero to this, right?
Yeah. Like your processes, technologies, all that stuff.
I know that there was some change. I mean, right now we're using React, but I know there was before I joined, and even at the very very beginning there was some different choices being made. So there was some prototypes, I guess you can call it, that was being made, and then changes were made along the road. So the current setup is quite different from the first kind of internal running versions. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, there's been so many changes, and it's like you said, we had our own internal network, and we had a very different technology stack. We used to use Backbone.js, for those who know it, and I don't remember. Maybe even jQuery was in there at some point. I don't know. There was a lot of strange things, but you do what you have to do to make something that works.
Some old school pioneers there.
It's a bunch of cowboys. We're all crazy people.
So I mean, the technology too. Like, there's other browsers like that are coming out that are new, like Brave, and then they're on GitHub and they have an Electron app, and and they're using web technologies as well. Can you talk about how Brave and yours differ or are similar in this sense with the technology stack now, and kind of some differences?
I guess I can start with we can take one each for the kind of not the technology stack, but for the I think they're going after slightly different users. I think it's nice to see more people entering the stage, and they're quite the same as us in terms of the way they work. They use web technology, like they use Electron, like you said, and it's a pretty similar approach to what we're doing. But they have a whole different way of thinking about the users, and it's more about the ad blocking and privacy, and it's a pretty simple browser, simple to use, a few features, but it's kind of all about the ads and the privacy and these kind of things. Whereas we target power users and then more tech savvy and feature demanding user group. So it's a bit of a different demographic for both of us. So I think it's interesting to see. I don't know how that model will work out in the long run, but it's definitely a curious choice. But yeah, that's.
I think, like you said, I mean, right now they are using Electron, and we are not using Electron. So this may be a little bit, technical, but it does create some differences for us internally, and it gives us some problems, and it also gives us some possibilities. So that's one difference. And also, I mean, we like Atle said, we aim to be very, very feature rich. So I think as once we've just added like the baseline set of features from Opera 12, then you'll just see us blossoming into this enormous utility truck, and Brave will probably stop a long time before that.
Well, it is a technical podcast, so I mean, you're not using Electron. You're using something else. Like, how are you distributing this?
We're an app for Chrome. A Chrome app is the packaging that we use.
Interesting. Okay. And is Vivaldi, the browser itself, totally open source?
No.
Okay. Is it partially open source?
Yes. I mean, there are certain components that we use that require to be open sourced. So they are open sourced on our site, I believe. And we're also using a significant amount of open source frameworks, and I think we've contributed a little bit to those. But the base of the browser, it's you can inspect it because it is web technology, but it's not available on GitHub.
Yeah, that was going to be something that I was going to ask about. It was like, if I wanted to contribute to the browser, do I go to some forums where I can comment on bugs, or do I go into GitHub and look at those pieces and see what I can do to help there? Like, how does that work, and how does that benefit everybody?
I think the best way to approach that is to go to our community site, which is vivaldi.net, where we have a big user forum, and we also have, of course, a bug submitting a form, so you can submit bugs. But if you want to partake more actively, you could comment on the forums. And there's a pretty low threshold for people to comment and kind of a request or wish for some feature to us actually implementing that particular feature. So it's we're pretty open ears to our users. So anything people want, we usually try to adapt, at least in the best way possible. I mean, there's not there's a limit to how much we can do, but usually we try to listen as much as we can. But it's not on GitHub, so you cannot directly contribute. But there are also, like Henrik said, you can inspect the whole UI. So we have there's threads on the forum where people modify the UI on their own, because you can add your own style sheets. If you're technical enough, you can apply your own style sheets, and you can move pretty much anything around. So from that perspective, if you want to just change your own browser, you can do that and share your own modifications in that sense.
And as developers, if we wanted to create extensions or plugins that are open source, are we, able to do that and share with the community?
Yeah, you can run. I mean, you can run almost any Chrome extension directly in Vivaldi from using the Chrome extension store. You can also just go into the extensions part of the browser and install anything you have locally. So they, all your favorite password managers and all these things, they just kind of work off the bat. So that's not really a problem.
So is the goal? So you can kind of hack on it, and you can, with extensions and whatnot. But you guys have got a lot of core features set already. Is the goal to give developers more tooling to sort of make those changes in the future, or are you looking to just kind of keep the baseline right now simply because of developer timing and resources? Because obviously, I think what gets lost in some of the conversation is that it is very hard at times to piece together a browser. It seems so simple, I'll just pull it, I'll just build it, it'll be fine. I've got 16 cores to burn, why not? But what is what is your roadmap from a developer standpoint as someone who may want to contribute to that? Is it going to be the same? Is it going to be different?
Yeah, Henrik, do you want to take this?
Yeah, I can try. I mean, obviously, it's not up to me to set the roadmap. But
get right on that, Henrik.
Yeah. So I think that the way we have worked so far is that we look at our users and their feedback, and also what they try to change. I mean, when they hack the browser to come up with some crazy customization, it's a sign that maybe we need to expose a little bit more in that area, right? So we make it easier for users to customize. I mean, we have done. We've written a theming engine, which is super cool, and you can't set the color of each individual element, but you can set general colors, and then we create color schemes based on that and adapt. And it's a balance, right? Because we want to give users as much power as possible, but we don't want to break upgrades. I mean, when we add new features, we want them to just work. So there is sort of a trade-off between exposing ourselves and our, I should say, our core, and letting users control it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the browsers can work being closed source as well, but there needs to be definitely some way to get user input, like what Edge does. They use the user voice, right? And they use WICG, and that stuff I think works really well. It's not as quick maybe as on GitHub, but there is like security concerns and other things that they do make a difference.
I mean, yeah. Also, I mean, again, maintaining, if we did open source, it doesn't run itself, right? We need to go through the commits and we need to see that things are worthwhile, or it's a big task as well to just suddenly open everything and then have to maintain this public repo. So there's a few considerations with our current size and setup, at least. So it's different angles.
And right now, I mean, when I started doing web development, we didn't have tools like the inspector, and then I found Firefox had Firebug, and that's when I fell in love with the browsers. so like, is the tooling the same or similar to like Chrome, in the sense that I can inspect elements and I can see the timeline and how all these things work for my application?
Right now it's the same. You have the Chrome dev tools built into Vivaldi, so right now they're identical. I mean, and going forward, of course, we would probably like to make something of our own, but I mean, again, we'll see how that goes. But as a developer right now, you have the exact same power or control or tooling available as you do in Chrome. with the timeline and the inspector and everything available.
Yeah, I worked as a designer on the developer tools in Opera called Dragonfly. I think they're actually open sourced, and we have had a lot of requests for adding our own developer tools. And I think it's one of the things we would like to do, but it's difficult to take that ahead of all the other things. So we have a really long list of things that we want to add.
Well, how many people work on the Chrome dev tools too? There's so much work that goes into them. They've already done so much that it's hard to justify that from a business perspective, I would imagine.
Yeah, but you have to keep in mind that, I mean, the entire project, the entire Vivaldi is, it might also be a business decision, but I think mostly this is a decision from the heart of our CEO. So, I mean, if he feels it's the right thing to do, then that's what we'll do.
Well, and it's dev tools are advancing rapidly these days, right? In terms of web developer platform things. I mean, you look at where we started out in terms of Firebug, right? Firebug came out early version 06, 07, something like that, right? Dragonfly started in what, 08-ish? As I recall, I think the first big release was in 2011 for Dragonfly. Like, DevTools are not one of those things that, we just got overnight. And I think any contribution to the ongoing tooling that exists today would probably be a better use of time. Because as you well know, as you guys pointed out, running an open source project of that given size is particularly difficult when you don't have massive amounts of people power to do all the things that are required. I think a lot of people say, oh, just open source it and the community will take care of everything. But that's not such the case, right? Like, if you don't have the tooling and the people to manage the pull requests, the issues, all the things that happen around that, you kind of will not have a good run, right? Like, all of a sudden now you can't get work done because you're dealing with stuff that prevents you from doing the work you need to do. So it is a double-edged sword. I think a lot of people say, open source this tomorrow, and you're like, sure, that'll be simple.
Yeah, I mean, we spend a significant amount of time reviewing each other's code, and we also spend quite a bit of time debugging when we make mistakes. And if we open up, then it's the additional risk of security, right? Because we know our people really well. So, I mean, even we make mistakes. So if it's someone we don't know well, then it's even greater risk. So I think it's a challenge, but it's a question of people.
Yeah, the business has a lot to do with it. And on that note too, I mean, there's a lot of recent news with Opera, where Opera laid off a whole bunch of people, and some of those people were really leaders in their fields. And I wonder if that is telling of older browsers and how that business model is versus like how the newer business models for browsers are. Maybe that's too much. What are your thoughts on that, though?
Well, I can only speak as the non-ex-Opera guy, but I mean, it's a change of ownership, right? And they have probably different interests than the current or the previous owners, right? And in the, I don't know when the switch kind of happened, but it's the business model from Opera's side has been much more about ads than actual users. They had these ad networks, right? And so that I think that's kind of slowly shifting towards this, and that makes more sense from a business perspective. And now that they have Chinese owners, I have no idea how that'll go in terms of for the users, but I don't think it can be a good thing in the long run. But maybe Henrik has more on this.
Yeah, I mean, since someone decided to buy Opera, obviously it had value for them, right? Otherwise they wouldn't pay. So it was a great success in that sense because it made a lot of money. But I mean, Opera changed a lot since Jon left many years ago, and I think Vivaldi is sort of where we continue. And it's just sad to see what's happened at Opera. I mean, there are a lot of former friends and colleagues who work there, and some of them still work there. And these are people that we see in the streets almost every day. I mean, Oslo isn't that big.
Brilliant people. I mean, the blogs, I've read a lot of the blogs from Opera, and it's really great stuff. So it is pretty sad, I think.
Yeah, and also many of the people who used to work at Opera now work elsewhere, like at Microsoft, working on Edge or Firefox, or some even at Apple.
It just goes to show that once you have the web inside you, it just always is there. Because, you know, again, they were titans of the web. And I said this on Twitter, and I'll say it again. Thank you to Opera DevRel, the people who've left, and the engineers, and everyone, the designers. They all did amazing work that helped the web as a whole. And I think that's the thing that kind of gets lost in it, was that the people who worked on Presto did magical work for the standards and everything else that happened around the web at the time. So many great talks, so much great content about making the web as a whole better, which I think is a sort of the trend these days that you see from a lot of people working on browsers, is that you hear about the web. And yeah, you hear about, oh, browser feature A, browser feature B, sure, but a lot more conversation around the standard, and that's been a long time coming. So thank you, everyone who is now moving on to other places. We still love you.
On a side note, I do want to emphasize that these are just our opinions. This is not Vivaldi opinions or like Opera, you know, saying these things. These are just us developers talking.
Right. Steal my opinion, Eric.
So that said, it is pretty sad, especially like Bruce Lawson. I can't believe they got rid of him.
Did you know we used to call him Awesome Lawson?
I believe it. He is pretty awesome.
He's energetic, for sure.
So, I mean, I did kind of glare over a lot of the UX and UI, and I did want to talk about that because I think that's something that, you know, when in 2008, when I was using Chrome, like in its beta form or whatever it was, I had a lot of people working with me in marketing, like, why are you even bothering? That's like a new thing that Google's just trying to get in on IE's market share, whatever, that'll never last. And I mean, it's interesting to me because their UI was so flat. They were new. There wasn't all these toolbars and things, and it was just so new and refreshing. Like, what is the UX and UI story that you guys have?
I mean, like we touched upon initially, it's I mean, in not to repeat myself, but the customization, you can go from, if you like it, you know, minimal and slim down, you can definitely achieve the same thing in Vivaldi. You can have a super minimal browser, but you can also go the complete opposite and just add all the things, right? And you can have everything you want readily available. And it's all about, you know, the UX can be very, you know, in your face, or it can be accessible from different input methods. So you can have everything available from keyboard shortcuts, right? So you can have all your favorite features available, but not displayed in the UI as a, you know, traditional toolbar, but you have everything available as either as quick commands or through panels or custom mouse gestures or all these different ways of doing different tasks. So you can kind of choose your approach to anything you want to achieve. So the UI is, in that sense, it's very complex. And I mean, from my own background coming into, like, you know, before joining Vivaldi, you know, I thought like, okay, making a browser, that's super easy. It's like an address bar and like in a couple tabs. It's perfect. It's so easy. This is gonna be easy. But that was not the case. So it's definitely a challenge, and especially with a, you know, a product like Vivaldi where you have so many approaches to a problem or to a feature. You can do everything so many different ways, and that's again the whole kind of UX, I guess you could say, philosophy, that we want to adapt to every person's different approach to doing their thing, right? So it's definitely challenging from a design perspective to kind of cater for all these different needs. But that's again what makes it fun, right? So it's not all one format. It's a bit of a puzzle. You can customize everything, and it's challenging to design for these rules, but it's also a lot of fun.
Yeah, I remember when Atle joined, we had like I would call them small therapy sessions, sort of preparing him for what was to come. Because as designers, we're used to, I mean, we design the experience, but in Vivaldi, it's a little bit different in that if the user wants something, then he should be able to. So that takes some getting used to.
But of course, I mean, it's not like a direct one-to-one. User X asks for this feature, and we just do what they say. We have to interpret this and make it work in our existing ecosystem, and kind of think of all the other things that need to work for this new thing to work. So we have all these variables floating around that users might not think about until they like, oh, I have an idea. It's super easy. Just add this button and this magically works, right? But then there's all these other things you need to take into account before you can do this new thing, right? So that, yeah.
It wonderfully multiplies, right? So every time you add something new, it multiplies wonderfully, and then the complexity goes up. And Jon has something he likes to say, which is, when in doubt, make it an option. So, I mean, when someone requests something, and unless it's very, very wrong, then we will likely make it an option. So, and this makes sure that me and Atle always have something to do.
So yeah, I mean, tabs you mentioned a few times, and you have stacked tabs, and I seem to remember a feature like that in Opera, but I didn't. It wasn't as. Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought that there was something similar to that in there. But stacked tabs is one of the big UI ones. So what are the main UI features for the experience?
I mean, when you install Vivaldi the first time, you kind of met with this little guide that takes you through, like, you can choose your color theme as the first thing, which Henrik mentioned is a pretty cool thing. It's all based on CSS variables, so we kind of make the whole theme on the fly. So you can render the whole UI, as you want on the fly. But you pick a theme, color theme, and you move on to and you choose, like, where do you want your tabs, like top, left, bottom, right. And so you can kind of, this is how you get going. And then you can, if you really dive into things, you can go into the settings, right? And you can customize everything. And like you said, we have tab stacks, which is one thing, which can of course also be disabled if you don't like them. And that's where you can drag a tab on top of another tab, and it turns into a little group. And once you do that, you have more options. Like you can have tabs tiled, so you can have them horizontally or vertically displayed side by side. Sorry, what was the question? I kind of fell off now.
Well, another feature that we have are panels, and we have web panels. So you can take any URL you dare and try to add it as a panel and see if it works. It's a nice way to test responsive pages. And we also come with a set of built-in panels. There's quite a bit of UI in there.
With all the customization, I would imagine development can get a little tricky with a lot of edge cases.
Yes. That's the short answer, yes. It's kind of what I touched upon earlier, right? If someone asks for a new feature, or if we have an idea for a new feature, it's always a challenge to kind of make this work with the existing things we have. And something as simple as putting a new button in the toolbar becomes an issue when you have the option to put the toolbar wherever you want, right? So it has to work. If the users has this insane setup, it has to work even though they have this insane setup, right? So we have to take all these things into account. So there's definitely the multiplying effect, which I talked about. Like if we add one little thing, we need to double check these other 4 or 8 cases that it actually still works in those kind of setups. So it's an extra challenge, but that's again what makes us different and why it's kind of fun to work on this.
Is there anything in particular about doing online payments or security, or even like you mentioned with Brave with the ad blocking? Is there anything that you guys are doing there to push the innovation of this?
I just briefly talked to Jon, our CEO, before this meeting about online payments, and he just mentioned I think this is and I mean, there are different approaches to this, but for everyday online payments, I think mobile is going to be a bigger thing where you can use your phone to pay for things, right? So in practical terms, I think when we hopefully eventually, that's a different topic. When we get the mobile version going, we can kind of, it's interesting to see it as a, you have the Apple Pay and you have Google Wallet and all these different things, right? So that's an interesting space. But I don't think we haven't really done or thought about anything in that area for now.
Right. Is there a roadmap right now for the mobile one? Like, are you going to be on iOS and Android and Windows, I guess, on the phones?
Mobile is coming, definitely. We have no dates, but we all really want to start getting our hands dirty and get that out. But I can't give any dates. But yeah, it's definitely coming. I think maybe one has said next year, but I mean next year is coming soon, so we'll see. But definitely it's coming, but there's no dates per now.
So I think the customization is really big. I think that you guys are pushing the envelope a lot with Vivaldi, and there is a lot of non-developers I've talked to who are really impressed with customization. So that's pretty awesome. Thing that we didn't touch on that we should talk about with Vivaldi?
We could talk for hours. I don't know, Henrik, anything you want to specifically bring up?
Well, I mean, I think once we were on par with Opera 12 in terms of features, I think then we'll just keep on accelerating, and then it's going to be totally crazy. So,
I mean, one small thing we haven't mentioned is also we're building a mail client, right? So that's also a
tiny project.
Yeah, so that's also kind of taking up some of our thinking time. So we're building a mail client, which is also going to be built into the browser, right? And that's quite a big thing as well. So I mean, again, we're a small team, so all these things, they do take up a considerable amount of time. So, but we're getting quite close. So we have that coming as well. So hopefully we can shake up that space a little bit as well when we have that coming out.
That's going to be so interesting.
Yeah, it sounds really cool. Yeah, I think that's it for now. Is there anything, Justin, you'd like to add?
Today is the 10th annual Blue Beanie Day.
Yes.
Blue Beanie Day.
Yeah, Blue Beanie
accessibility
Day.
and
accessibility, all the accessibility things. So
excellent.
If you're out there not knowing anything about accessibility, today is the day to learn about accessibility.
I have a blue coffee cup, that's all I can do.
I got a blue shirt.
I am rocking the Blue Ice King.
Oh, nice.
I'm sure that's a copyright violation of some type now.
I have blue lights.
He has blue lights. Yeah, that's true.
All right, so thank you guys, Henrik and Edel. If people want to find you or learn more about Vivaldi, help out with the project, like how do people find you guys to chat with you?
I would say the first thing to do is to go to vivaldi.com and just try the browser. And when you want to reach us and complain or ask for features, you go to vivaldi.net, which is the forum. And that should be enough to get you going.
And we have a developer blog where we publish snapshots and we read the comments there. So I mean, if you have something you would like to let us know about, you can write it there. And I mean, Vivaldi browser is all over social media, so you can find us there as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And your Twitter handles? You guys on Twitter? I know Adel, you are.
Yeah, I'm my alias, so Subtle Pattern is my Twitter handle.
Yeah, I have my last name, Helmer.
I think that needs to be spelled out, in the show notes or whatever.
Yeah, definitely put that in. But if people want to contribute to the project, though, definitely don't contact them on Twitter.
People do.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
See ya.